Right, when it comes to an Indigenous voice to the Parliament, the Labor Party is too impatient to wait for something as democratic as the people's vote, or at least that's the case in South Australia. The South Australia Labor government has just announced that regardless of any federal referendum, it wants to have an Indigenous voice to the Parliament up and running before any of you have your say. It hasn't offered any justification in terms of any existing failure to consult with Aboriginal people, and it hasn't explained how this voice will make any difference to the way Aboriginal people live. As with its federal counterpart, it's the vibe that's driving all of this. The imagery of Indigenous people formally telling the rest of us what's wrong with their lives and how it's all our responsibility, not theirs, to make it better. Unlike the Albanese government's proposal, though, at least there's some detail for this South Australian voice. People who can prove their Indigenous ancestry will elect delegates to local voices, each of which will then choose 2 presiding officers, one male, one female, who'll then constitute the state voice. So basically, new electorates based on race and new elected representatives based on race. The local South Australian voices, we're told, will meet between 4 and 6 times a year, and the state voice will be able to address the Parliament on, quote, particular bills of interest to First Nations people, and make an annual address to the Parliament, as well as have, and I quote again, annual engagement meetings with ministers and CEOs about the priorities of their departments and agencies. Delegates, we're told, will be remunerated as if they were serving on a government board, and they'll be able to claim expenses. Now, address the Parliament, that point I have a real problem with, because it's always been the case the only way for people to be able to speak on the floor of the chamber, with rare exception, is that they are elected by all of us at a democratic election. To change this is very significant, and to change it based on race is wrong. But beyond that, the basic objections remain. Why should one group of Australians have more say than everyone else? And why should we make government and its agencies pay more attention to some people than others based on race? By far the best way to ensure a fair hearing for Indigenous people is to elect them to the Parliament that represents all of us, not to set up new bodies that just give some of us a special say.